Hello, everybody. It is 7:49 a.m. Central Time on Wednesday, December 28th, 2016, and welcome into the Earthquake 3D live stream. Hope you have your coffee or whatever it is that you use to get yourself through the day. And welcome into a live stream where we basically showed the seismic events that have happened over the last 48 hours. And we issue semi-daily earthquake forecasts. If you're new here and you don't know that, we do issue weekly and semi-daily forecasts for areas to watch for new movement to strike. If you're not aware of what's going on, a noteworthy swarm of earthquakes has broken out at the California-Nevada border, topping out at 5.7 dual to 5.7 earthquakes, the largest earthquakes in several years' time to strike in this location in eastern California at the Nevada border. And I'm going to go ahead and open up the earthquake information, and we're going to go source out the coordinates. If you're new, you need to see where the earthquake struck. If you're a repeat viewer, you already know, but I'm going to be repeating myself several times today for everybody in here who's just waking up and tuning into the news here in the States. So, the way we do this, we're going to take the coordinates for the 5.7 and we're going to put them in on Google Earth. As we put them in, of course, we just paste them in and hit search. It'll take us in on the earthquake epicenter. I recommend you do this all the time. Whenever there is a standout earthquake or an earthquake that looks like it's interesting or might be of some significance, and in this case, this swarm is absolutely massive. So we just zoomed in, but I'll back it out so you can see where the greater location is. Here is California, here is Nevada, and we're zooming back in on the swarm location marked by the USGS, and the other 5.7 struck here, the second 5.7, the first 5.7 struck here. And when you look at where they are, you're going to see a few things within a mile to 2 miles that stand out, like Aurora Crater, volcano. And this is exposed obsidian, black basalt. Even the cinder cone is still visible, and the old lava flow that exists off the flanks of the collapsed volcano. Additionally, over to the east, a younger flow that's less weathered stands about 300 feet off the desert floor. And there's a sill here, there's a cone at the tip that broke out a long time ago and spewed its chunky lava that wasn't very liquid-like. You can tell it was 300 feet high and only flowed out a few miles, indicating that it was a more viscous type magma that was coming out when it did erupt. Same with Aurora Crater. Now, a significant size swarm has broken out here. And it's not the sign of an eruption, it's actually a sign of the pressure that was coming from off the coast. Earlier yesterday, a 5.7 type earthquake struck where our red arrow is. USGS did a 1.5 magnitude downgrade on it. One of the stations, I should say, showed 6.9 in this location, but it was far out to sea, so nobody's going to feel it, so whatever magnitude they go with is going to be the magnitude that ends up reported to the public. However, if you check the station magnitudes, clearly shows that it's a mid-range 5 to upper 5. 5.7, as I said last night. I said this at 8 p.m. West Coast time last night. I had this 4.3 that you see highlighted in blue up on the screen, and I was talking about it being really a 5.7. Now, the reason we were talking about 5.7 and the reason the station showed 5.7, we were looking for a 5.7 to strike at California, Northwest California, in California. So now we have two instances of a 5.7 off the coast yesterday, followed by a 5.7 interior to the coast today, and this significant size swarm. So, in other words, the earthquake off the coast where our red arrow is caused pressure to be placed down here to the east-southeast, and that has since pushed further to the east-southeast. Take a look at the screen now. These smaller earthquakes over to the east are subsequent earthquakes that struck after these big earthquakes hit. So pushing over to the east by southeast. Same time that hit, down here in Southern California, south of Salton Sea, right near Cerro Prieto volcano, which is the volcano with the graffiti on the inside of the crater written by locals down there in Mexicali. And I've shown that so many times in past videos, I won't waste your time showing it to you now. Just understand, Southern California is experiencing some pressure increase right now off the activity, spreading down to the east-southeast. So, over the next day, 2 days, going into 3 days, we have to watch over to the east. And when I say over to the east, I'm talking about the fracking operations in Oklahoma, southern Colorado, and over in West Texas, down near Fort Stockton. 3 different locations. All 3 should be hit in the next week for certain, but in the next 3 days, we're looking for a possible large release in here. Why would it release in there? Well, in the past, whenever we see earthquakes on the West Coast, we see follow-up movement in the Midwest within a few days. This just happened earlier this week. There was a 4.3 off the West Coast earlier this week. There it is, in red, off the coast. You see that there? Next to our newer 4.3 in kind of a pinky color, the red is the one that struck earlier this week. It was immediately followed within a few hours, the next day, by a 4.0 in southern Colorado, North New Mexico at the fracking operations. Same time that happened, a new swarm re-increased back in Oklahoma. Pressure transferring to the east. 4.3 off the coast, 4.0 in Colorado, swarm of 3s going up to upper 3 in Oklahoma, all within a day of each other. Well, that's going to happen again, but it's much larger movement. So this time we're talking about 5.7s, 5.5s, swarms of 2s, 3s, and 4s, all mixed in with each other. And I calculated it myself that it would equal about a 6.2 to 6.3 type earthquake already with the magnitudes the way they are if you added them all together. So if you add all the energy expended right now, it equals about a 6.2 to 6.3 pushing to the east. And it's going to hit these fracking operations and oil pumping operations across Fort Stockton, southern Colorado, and Oklahoma. All 3 should be hit this week because pressure, exceeding pressure, is coming from the West Coast. When it hits these drill points, the drill points are nothing more than perforations on the edge of the craton. The craton is just the geologist's word for the interior portion of the plate. And the interior portion of the plate just so happens to be the spots where they've done all the drilling for the gas and oil. And those spots are going to be hit, as perforations are with any type of solid structure. If you put perforations along it and you put pressure on it, the perforations are going to be the spots where the pressure releases first. So that stands to reason that in these areas we have the risk to go up to the equivalent of what's striking on the West Coast right now. In other words, the up to 5.7 is possible in the Midwest over the next few days, or a swarm that's very significant in size. Okay? So that's a big deal for the Midwest. Anytime we see large earthquakes in the Midwest, it causes damage, just like it does out west, but there's less houses out here in the desert, as opposed to over here in more heavily populated southern Colorado, Oklahoma, Texas. Now, when we talk about Oklahoma, we also technically have to increase the area right into South Kansas on the border because the fracking operations go up into Kansas a little bit, but mostly Oklahoma. Okay, it is the center target for the receiving pressure on its way to the east. And that's bad news for the people in Oklahoma. Now, out here in California, the shake reports are intense. Copper Tropicals, everybody out there talking about it. And they're the people that are regulars here in the chat room. So you got to understand, we issued a warning over the past 3 days for California to be hit by a 5.7 to 5.8. Last night, going into this morning, is day 3. So, California hit by the 5.7. We warned for a 5.7 and a 5.7 hit. If that was just it, you might say, oh, you just got lucky, right? Well, we also warned Japan for a low 6.0 and a 5.9 hit. Where did we warn Japan? We warned between the letter D and the tip of the red arrow. Look where it struck. At the tip of the red arrow, 5.9, 6.0. And it's been a while since a 6 has struck in this location. So why did a 6 strike? It was due to the activity to the south that we warned of over the last 3 to 4 days. Now it's been hit. There's the 6 we were looking for. So understand, it wasn't just one location that was hit. It was 2 locations that was hit this morning. Now I'm going to do something significant that I think everybody, if you're looking, stop what you're doing and take a quick look I'm going to turn on something that's a feature here on Earthquake 3D, and that is the grid. The grid shows us our latitude and longitude, okay? Now I'm going to park my mouse over Japan where the earthquake is. I'm going to put my tip right on the point where the earthquakes are. Now I'm not going to move my mouse at all. I'm just going to move the globe. Let's get the globe rotating. Okay, globe's rotating, parking my mouse over the earthquake location right. Whoop, let's do this again. I want you to see that I'm doing this right. Park my mouse over the earthquake location and don't move it. Okay, so I'm sitting back. You know I'm not doing any funny business here. That's the earthquake in Japan, 5.8, 5.96, something like that. Now watch where we go by. See what's coming into the picture here? Huh? How about that? Within just a few points on the degree, we're talking about almost the exact same latitude across the Pacific. So, both locations on both sides of the Pacific, take a look at it, struck equidistantly and struck by the same size earthquakes. So if you added all this up, this takes us up to a 6. You go check the station list over here in Japan, and it shows mid-range 6, low 6, somewhere in that region. So the two earthquakes are similar in size, and they're also on the same latitude, and they struck within hours of each other. There's a relation. One side of the plate moves, the other side of the plate moves. We've seen it happen like a tennis match, back and forth, over and over again. So just understand, that's something that we watch and see and wait for. It's something that professionals denied. They said that it's impossible for earthquakes to bounce back and forth like we're talking about. But you can see it right before your own eyes. It's not the first time it's happened, guys. This has happened so many times that my viewers in here, how many people are in here right now? About 700 people? 670? Okay. That there hundreds of the people that are in here have seen it happen so many times. A new deep 4.7 has struck down on the Izu Ridge. A deep earthquake down below our letter D, or very close to our letter D. Okay, D on the map stands for deep earthquake, creatively, right? Okay, deep earthquake 4.7 just occurred down on the Izu Ridge. This means there's a potential for a 5.7 to 6.7 to strike within 72 hours. Where would the 5.7 to 6.7 strike? It would strike a nearby area that's currently under flux, that's the area to the north, and a silent zone to the south. Both areas are going to be hit. It's not a 50-50 flip. Both sides of this deep earthquake are going to be hit by a shallower, larger earthquake. Also, make note of where the 4.7 is over here on the eastern side. See that we have two sets of arrows. One set of arrows going along the Izu Ridge, the other set of arrows going down towards Taiwan. There's going to be a similar sized earthquake that strikes over to the west of this 4.7 that's going to be striking over equidistantly spaced near Taiwan, northeast Taiwan. So the potential to go from 4.7 up to 5.7 is definite, and it could go up to as much as 6.7. Deep earthquakes cause shallow earthquakes, sometimes 2 magnitudes larger. That's 100 times greater in actual magnitude translation. So a deep earthquake down below puts pressure up above on the underside of the plate, and it fans upwards and outwards in a dome-type shape. Let me go ahead and turn on our dome-type shapes so you can see this recent 4.7 and understand where that's going to put pressure. So I want you to imagine pressure coming up underneath the plate, and as it's coming up, it's going to hit these plate boundaries that are marked with the red arrows. And when the pressure comes up and it fans out, it goes out to the perimeter and it strikes as it reaches up towards the surface. And there's a translation going up 1 to 2 magnitudes as that happens. So the deep earthquake down below is a 4.7. The shallow earthquake up above is going to be 5.7 to 6.7. And you see where the dome lies, right? You see where it goes. Those are our perimeter areas, are the spots where we watch. So over the next 3 days, it should happen, in addition to what just hit. Okay? So, as we're talking here, the earthquake swarm is carrying on over in California. We will expect that to go on throughout the day today, and we will expect the pressure to transfer over to the east and re-excite things back up at our fracking operations. So if you're in the Midwest, you got a couple hours to at least a day's time to prepare, and I would say you need to prepare for a potential larger earthquake, which means look at the shelves, look at the different things in your house that could fall off and break. Also to make preparations with your children, friends, family, loved ones. Let them know that there's incoming pressure. The reason there's incoming pressure is that the plate is always displaced over to the east after the west coast is hit. It's simple Newtonian physics. You push on the side of one thing, the other side is going to move, and since this thing is all connected with fault zones, the whole plate moves, and it moves along the interior edge where they need to have what I would call a new plate boundary marked on the USGS map. They would need to mark this out with a plate boundary. In other words, it's a new plate boundary region that we're identifying that moves that never was thought to exist before. Let's just put it that way. The USGS does not have a red line over here yet. They should, because pressure transfers across these regions, indicating that it is a plate boundary, which means the plate is broken in half compared to what they thought it was. I don't know, we're just turning all of geology on its head as we're doing earthquake forecasting. I get it why we're controversial online. In case you didn't know, you're talking, or at least listening to, the most controversial geophysics nerd on the internet, bar none. So, word up to my people. There's 700 people in here. If you're new, hey, I gotta ask, please subscribe. Please subscribe. I'm trying to grow my channel into something noteworthy so that people will listen on YouTube. I do this on a daily basis, and I try to do my best in getting the warnings out to the world in a timely manner, and trying to get the magnitudes down spot on, and trying to refine the locations down to a few hundred miles, a region, as opposed to a whole country. Trying to warn smaller areas so that only a few people have to be warned in each specific location. In this case, the area we warned up here in Northwest California, that would encompass this region here. And when we get it down to a region that's good, that's better than any professional could do, because professionals say it's impossible to forecast an earthquake. Yet here we are, and I'm not bragging, I've got to tell you, because nobody else will, that we issued the warnings for the last 3 days for 5.7 to 5.8 for California, and we issued a 3 to 4 day watch. And here we are. So on the last day of the watch, it's hit with the expected magnitude. And the expected magnitude struck off the coast, but they did this weird downgrade thing, which we called out last night. And it's so ironic that last night we said this was a 5.7 off the coast, and then today a 5.7 hits interior to the coast. It's evidence that last night did have a 5.7 off the coast. They're similar-sized earthquakes. We always see this happen. Similar-sized earthquakes strike on the west coast and then interior, like I've been talking about for the last 15 minutes. So, if you're just now tuning in, how many people are in here? 714 now. A large earthquake, and it's the largest earthquake of the year for the Intermountain West, and in the past several years for Nevada, struck today, this morning, 5.8, starting out at 5.9 actually, then going down to 5.7, then coming back up to 5.8, then going back down to 5.7. And a swarm of other 5s, which equals out to about a 6. So all these 5s struck in the past few hours, mixed in with dozens or more of 2s and 3s. And if I turn on the microquakes, here, let's do that. Let's turn on our USGS last day's worth of microquakes, including all the 0s and 1s. And if we include all the 0s and 1s, I can't even get this sucker on the globe without it going way up off the screen. So we're talking a couple hundred earthquakes so far, probably. I don't know how many that is. It looks like about 100 or so. And of those, many of them going up into 5.0 range themselves. So it's significant. It's a large amount of movement. Have your plans dusted off. I know if you live on the West Coast, you've already heard this 1,000 times, but if you live in the Midwest, you may have not heard this much. You need to have your earthquake plans dusted off. I need to have my earthquake plans dusted off here in Midwest and Missouri. You guys may or may not know, I'm from St. Louis, grew up in Ferguson. You may have heard of Ferguson before for other reasons, but yeah, from Ferguson, here in St. Louis, and our red arrow goes right over where I live. Okay, so we have to watch in the Midwest, including the New Madrid, but more to our west because of the fracking operations. You guys are our new pressure release valve. I mean, Thanks for becoming the new Madrid seismic zone, guys. I'm being sarcastic, but you are the new Madrid seismic zone. Southern Colorado, Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas. Instead of Missouri, Illinois, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Arkansas. And the reason that is humans have stepped in and drilled 10,000, more than 10,000 points where that's fractured in the crust. Humpty Dumpty's broke. You can't put it back together again. You can't fill them with concrete. It's going to constantly be hit there from now on. You are the new Madrid. We get hit with your leftovers. Whatever pressure doesn't expend at these fracking operations then goes to the east and hits my neighborhood. And since it's going to be large at the fracking operations, we do have to watch this time in the New Madrid for a swarm, nothing huge, topping out more like in the threes, so it probably won't even get anybody's attention, but more like heavy activity to the west, and then New Madrid hit by a swarm. Okay? So it always transfers to the east. Look on the globe right now. You see the red arrows? The red arrows indicate which way the pressure transfers around the planet. It took me 7 long years of study to determine these directions, and it holds true on a weekly basis at this point. Now, it may change in the future, but I doubt it. As it stands right now, it looks like this is the way the pressure is always taken, hence the shape of the plates. And every spot where you see an X mark is a spot where our pressure transfers to, ultimately, before it terminates. So, our pressure starts where our letter D's are, comes up from down below in the plate. Here again, let me show you these here. Okay, where our letter D's are is where our pressure comes up, and it transfers outwards around the planet and ends up at our X marks. That's the way the pressure flows around the planet. So, make note of where the letter D's are, make note of where the letter X's are, and then look in between those points and watch the earthquakes progress from region to region following these arrows. And it usually follows these arrows. Seldomly we see, maybe one in 100 or 1 in 1,000 large earthquakes will strike outside of these warning areas where the red arrows are, which means that pressure transfers along those areas predominantly. Okay? So, everybody, if you're new, subscribe. If you're a repeat viewer, I'll be back on, let's give it another 45 minutes, and I will come back on at 9 a.m. Central Time, which is 10 a.m. East Coast Time, and 7 a.m. West Coast Time. So we'll see you guys in 45 minutes. Have a plan. Be prepared. Don't be scared. Be prepared. And being prepared means looking around your house and knowing what to do when an earthquake of significant size strikes, like what just hit in California. Can knock things off shelves, can knock over your TV, can break things. So those are the kind of preps you need to be prepared for right now with these size earthquakes. And one other thing I would like to say. There is a slight potential, and I mean slight, that it could go upwards in magnitude all of a sudden. That with this size of a swarm and the fact that it's striking at volcanoes, that this might indicate that there could be a larger earthquake. I would say less than I'm just going to put an artificial percentage on it. Let's say less than 5% chance. Real low. Let's call it that. Really, really low chance that there could be a larger earthquake. I don't want to rule it out entirely, but the fact that there's hundreds of other smaller earthquakes striking now pretty much lets us know that if it's going to be, an aftershock, it's going to be less than, most likely less than, the original 5.7 to 5.8 that struck. Okay? That's good news for the area, right? So that's somewhat good news. That all being said, it's striking at a volcano. If anybody lives out there, I know it's in the middle of the desert, but if anybody lives out there, you may want to, if you know the area and you aren't going to risk your life doing it, drive down that state route and see what's there. You can get the coordinates if you got GPS, and if you're used to driving in the desert and surviving out there, if you live out there, I know you are. But, if you're a random person from LA or something, don't go driving out into the desert, guys. But take a look at the screen here really quick, and let me show you where the earthquake struck. Okay, here is State Route 3C. But when you look at State Route 3C, it looks more like a dirt highway. So State Route 3C out here in Nevada looks pretty rural if you ask me. But you'll get up to Aurora Crater very quickly, I suppose. And I don't know where the other highways are. The nearest highway goes through Hawthorne, which is right here, Highway 359. And then coming off of 359 is Lucky Boy Pass Road. And I would dare say you'd be pretty lucky if you were to try to drive up that pass. See where it goes? I suppose that would be an adventure and a half if you wanted to go drive it. But man, you're going to be in the back mountains of the desert in the winter. Probably not a good idea. Don't drive out there. Fly out there. You got a helicopter? Go fly out there. But somebody should get out there and take a look and see if there's any kind of volcanic activity that's going on with this size of a swarm right next to some ancient volcanoes. Very easily, if nobody's out there. I mean, do you see any structures within any distance? What is this? Lone Star Ranch. Ah, there is one person there. Okay, there's one house there nearby. Well, I don't know if those people would be able to report it or if they even could, but it'd be really easy to censor, I'll tell you that. Maybe somebody should get out there and check. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I don't want to get anybody's antenna raised too high on this, but the fact that it's striking at the base of some volcanoes next to Mono Lake, and it's a huge swarm, if I was a geologist and I lived out there, I'd be renting an SUV, packing up my water, getting my emergency supplies, notifying state police that I'm driving out there, and then go and check it out. But that would be me if I lived there. I wouldn't ask you guys to do that. I'm just saying. It would be interesting to see if there was a volcanic eruption happening out there right now. How would we ever know, right? I mean, with the amount of earthquakes striking the area, I mean, it could easily be. But I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying it's very strange that it's happening right on those flanks of those two volcanoes that we've shown 100 times in the past 2 months. So, all right. So, it is 8:17 a.m. Central Time. I'll be back on at 9 a.m. Central Time. 45 minutes. Word up. Peace out. Have a plan. Be prepared. Don't be scared.